Take a look at this 3-chord progression. I want to show you how to transform these chords into a more beautiful, interesting keys part like this. We'll get there in 7 simple steps, and I want you to remember that each of these steps is a tool you can apply to other chord progressions, not just to this one. Our first step is to find the root position chords. And for A half diminished 7, that looks like this: A, C, E flat, G. For A flat diminished, it'll be A flat, B, D, and F. And then our root position E flat major is E flat, G, and B flat. And I won't spend much more time here because you can always go to my website, pianofluency.com, and get a 2-page guide on how to find every kind of chord symbol at the piano for free. So our next step will be to use just one inversion shape in the right hand and add in bass notes in the left hand. So this creates kind of a basic pop piano arranging style. It's going to sound like this. Now to find that inversion in my right hand, I'm looking for that same E flat major shape, but I'm taking the bottom note up an octave. So that's my inversion of E flat major. And it makes for a nicer melody on top, instead of that big leap down to the root position E flat chord. So once more, that sounds like this. And the next step after that is also very important for making keys parts sound good when you're playing chords at the piano. It's the sustain pedal. So now I'm going to connect between each chord with the sustain pedal. It means that once I've engaged the pedal, I can take my hands away and you'll still hear the sound of the chord ringing out. I'm going to lift the pedal very briefly right when I play the next chord and then put it back down. And we call that changing the pedal. And the coordination here is the same. It will be the same throughout your life at the piano, and it will also be the same here once we get into the broken chord, the arpeggios part of the lesson. So let's go to that now. I'm now going to play this arpeggio pattern or broken chord pattern. Now, for many students, this is going to be a big step up in difficulty. I want to talk about how I created this pattern. Students really love learning about different rhythm patterns as a way to make chord progressions at the piano sound more interesting. The best place to come up with new rhythm patterns is to use your ear, to use your imagination. And you can always get inspiration by listening to recordings that you like and hearing what's happening rhythmically, trying to mimic it. In this case, I was improvising this short chord progression for the lesson, and I just thought of a gesture. I thought, I wanted it to sound like that. So I'm actually going to show you how to create that same pattern without using the exact voicings that we're going to arrive at the end, right? We're going to do it with a more basic set of voicings first. So we haven't used all of our steps yet to create the final voicing, but we can still create that pattern I imagined. It's going to work differently. Right? It works like this. And in fact, I could use that same imagination of what I want the pattern to sound like, even if I had very different voicings with totally different number of notes shared between the two hands. So in this case, I have 5 notes shared between the two hands. That has something to do with how the pattern's working out. But if I were, say, doing this, just playing exactly the same root position chord in both hands, which I can do in this part of the piano. I wouldn't want to do it down here unless I wanted something really dark and dense. But in this part of the piano, that'll work great if I wanted a really full, rich sound, 8 voices here. And if I were to play that same pattern over these 8 voices, what would it sound like? Maybe something like that, or just going from bottom to top would work. That one was really complicated. I don't know if I can replicate it. But you get the idea. I'm just following my ear and my imagination. And the thing that's true across all of these different patterns is that I'm not changing any notes, right? I'm just leaving my hand in place for whatever voicing I've chosen for the chords. And then I'm expressing the rhythm in my imagination across those available notes. This might take you a lot more time and care when you're starting out if you want to create some sort of rhythmic pattern between the hands or this kind of broken chord pattern. In either case, you're going to have to sit with it and spend more time, maybe do more trial and error when you're first attempting this. But really make an attempt to go from what you're hearing, and it will become easier with time. So there was our broken chord pattern. Now, officially, that was a broken chord pattern. An arpeggio pattern is when we repeat a chord shape up the piano in a broken chord pattern. So that's this part, right? And it's fairly easy to understand what's happening there. I'm just taking the 3 notes from an E flat major chord, and I'm repeating them up the piano. Now, with arpeggios like that, to make them sound smooth, it can help a lot to have a good fingering. And I'm here putting my finger 1, my thumb, on the 1 white key that's available in this group of notes. This is a great way to play an E flat major arpeggio, also A flat major and D flat major, because all of these have something in common. We've got 2 black keys and 1 white key. So it works really well with the shape of our hand to put the thumb on the white key. Right? And if I wanted to go higher, I might finish with finger 5, my pinky, on the highest note that I'm going to play. But other than that, you notice that I am not using my pinky. I either like to play this 1, 2, 4 or 1, 2, 3. Either works pretty similarly well in terms of the physicality of it. Now we're ready for step 6. This is our final, most advanced arranging technique here. It's called drop 2. You might have heard of it before if you're into music theory. It's something arrangers love to do. We're taking a close-voiced chord shape like this, and we're just dropping the second voice from the top down an octave. So that's the drop 2. It's the second voice from the top. The 2 here has nothing to do with the chord symbol or the chord theory. It's just the second voice from the top. So if I put that down an octave, I get this really nice spaced out sound. And I'll leave the root note on the bottom and apply that to both of these first 2 chords. So here you can see this root position shape. I apply drop 2 and I get a more spread sound. And then here, this is not drop 2. I'm just choosing a good way to preserve that same spacing between the voices because I'm limited to just the 3 notes of my E flat major triad here. With all of that and with a little bit of a freer approach to the rhythm here where I get to be more expressive, it might sound like this. And that's it. Now for our 7th and final step, as kind of a bonus step, my favorite suggestion for students is always to ask you to put things into a different key. It will really help you to understand what's happening in any chord progression that you're playing, and it will allow you to apply the things you've learned here to other pieces of music more easily. So let's analyze this. It'll be sharp 4 half diminished, 4 fully diminished, and 1. We're in the key of E flat major. And you might be surprised, this is actually a pretty common chord progression, even though it's non-diatonic. You know, we have a couple notes here that don't belong in our E flat major scale. I think this chord progression is so popular because the voice leading works so well. You know, you can see these voices just moving down in half steps from one chord to the next. So now I'm going to apply that analysis and bring this into the key of C major. Now, my guess is that for many of you, you are more capable of understanding the theory than playing everything that I demonstrated. And that's very, very common for adult students. So it's with that in mind that I always like to push people to spend time playing very simple things at their instrument so that they can actually develop the muscle memory to play these things and make music, not just understand the theory. Even though we love music theory is a lot of fun, but so is playing music. So if you're interested in exploring that idea more, if you want really concrete, simple suggestions for weekly practice, you should go to pianofluency.com. I have a whole program built around that idea. You should also subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this and you want to see other similar videos moving forward. My name is Ted with Piano Fluency.